Imagine being at 33,000 feet, trusting your life to a pilot. Now, imagine that the greatest danger is actually sitting in the cockpit. Today, you'll hear about 4 real but mysterious cases where, according to the official reports, the pilots themselves brought down their planes, taking hundreds of lives with them. March 24, 2015, Barcelona Airport. Around 9 in the morning, Germanwings Flight 9525 took off from Barcelona, heading to Düsseldorf, Germany. The scheduled departure time was 8:35, but there had been a short delay. In the cockpit were Captain Patrick Sondenheimer, 34 years old, and his co-pilot Andreas Lubitz, 27. Earlier that morning, they had already completed a flight together that left Düsseldorf at 6:01 a.m. Now this was the return flight. At 9 a.m., the Airbus A320 departed from Barcelona and set course north. The captain engaged the autopilot. By 9:27 a.m., the plane had reached its cruising altitude of 38,000 feet. At 9:30 a.m., the plane entered French airspace, and the Marseille control center took over monitoring the flight. At that moment, Captain Sondenheimer handed control of the aircraft to his co-pilot Lubitz. The captain then left the cockpit to use the restroom. Now alone at the controls, the co-pilot adjusted the altitude setting on the panel. The plane began descending, but none of the passengers or crew, including the captain, noticed right away. However, the Marseille controller did notice and called Lubitz over the radio. There was no response. Less than 2 minutes later, the captain returned from the restroom. When he tried to re-enter the cockpit, he found the door locked. He knocked, but again there was no reply. He then tried the emergency access code to open the door, but the co-pilot had disabled it, a feature meant to prevent hijackers from forcing their way into the cockpit. Captain Sondenheimer attempted to reach Lubitz through the interphone, but there was no answer. Marseille Control also kept calling on the radio, but Lubitz remained silent. The controller could clearly hear the sound of Lubitz's breathing, meaning the co-pilot was conscious and calm. Realizing the plane was descending, the captain began pounding on the door, shouting, but still nothing. He then tried to break it down with an axe, using all his strength, but it was useless. After September 11th, cockpit doors had been reinforced to be bulletproof. The passengers grew alarmed at the captain's frantic behavior. By then, the plane was already at just 10,000 feet, barely 3,000 meters above the ground. From inside the aircraft, the peaks of the French Alps could be seen dangerously close. Panic spread among the passengers. As the captain pounded on the door, he could hear the warning alarms inside the cockpit, signaling the aircraft's proximity to the ground. The alarm grew louder and more urgent until at 9:41 a.m. Silence. Why did co-pilot Andreas take such an action? Was it a psychological breakdown, an intentional act, or something beyond explanation? "97 passengers were boarding Flight 185, a 1 hour and 40-minute journey to Singapore. They came from 14 different countries. In the cockpit was Captain Su Wei Ming, a highly experienced pilot who had served for many years in the Singapore Air Force. His co-pilot was Duncan Ward, also very experienced. The atmosphere in the cockpit was calm and relaxed, At 3:30 p.m., the aircraft took off. After 29 minutes of flight, as the plane reached its cruising altitude of 38,000 feet, the cabin crew began serving meals to the passengers. The co-pilot said he was going to grab a snack and asked the captain if he wanted anything. The captain requested only a glass of water. This was the last conversation recorded on the cockpit voice recorder. Investigators believe it was at this moment that the captain likely locked the cockpit door, taking advantage of the co-pilot's absence. Moments later, radar control detected the aircraft beginning a rapid descent in a steep angle, dropping 15,000 feet in just 30 seconds. Soon after, the plane disappeared from radar screens. The aircraft plunged into a river in Indonesia. November 29, 2013, Maputo International Airport, Mozambique. Mozambique Airlines Flight 470 was departing for Luanda, Angola. The aircraft was an Embraer 190, carrying 27 passengers and 6 crew members. In the cockpit were Captain Herminio dos Santos Fernandes and First Officer Gracio Gregorio Shimukili. During the cruise phase, while flying over northern Namibia, the first officer left the cockpit. When he returned, he was unable to get back in. He tried entering the code, but the door had been locked from the inside. Analysis of the black boxes revealed that the captain had remained alone in the cockpit, locked the door, and manually initiated the fatal descent. The reason behind his actions was never determined. At 1:09 p.m., the aircraft disappeared from radar and later crashed in Babukiva National Park, resulting in the death of all on board. On October 31, 1999, EgyptAir Flight 990 departed from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, bound for Cairo International Airport in Egypt. The aircraft, a Boeing 767, was carrying 203 passengers and 14 crew members. This was the second leg of the flight, having departed from Los Angeles 4 hours earlier. Due to the expected duration of the flight, approximately 10 hours, 2 full sets of pilots were required on board. The flight crew consisted of Captain Ahmed El Rabashi, First Officer Adel Anor, and the relief crew, Captain Ralph Nuruldin and First Officer Gamil Albatuti. The flight took off at 1:20 a.m. About 20 minutes later, the relief captain Ralph Nuruldin entered the cockpit ahead of schedule and decided to take the first officer's seat. At that moment, the regular captain took the opportunity to use the restroom, leaving Ralph alone in the cockpit. Shortly after, Albatuti disengaged the autopilot, lowered the nose of the plane and accelerated. The aircraft then entered a steep dive, reaching extremely high speeds. The angle was so sharp that the G-forces made it nearly impossible to move inside the cabin. The captain attempted to return to the cockpit. The plane's speed approached the speed of sound, exceeding safety limits. Albatuti shut down the engines. Gradually, they began to detach from the aircraft. By the time the captain reached the cockpit, it was too late to do anything. The plane plunged into the Atlantic Ocean, about 75 miles off the US coast. During the descent, Captain Albertucci repeatedly murmured in Arabic, "I trust in God." Official investigations into the Germanwings Flight 9525 crash revealed that co-pilot Andreas Lubitz locked the captain out of the cockpit and alone deliberately programmed the plane's descent into the French Alps. According to reports, the tragedy may have been the result of an unreported depressive condition. But what drove Lubitz to act this way? Had he planned it for a long time, or did something unforeseen push him to that decision at that exact moment? Even with all the evidence, the true motive remains shrouded in silence. In relation to SilkAir Flight 185, investigators in the United States concluded that the crash was most likely caused intentionally by the captain after he disabled the flight recorders. Yet Indonesian authorities rejected this theory, citing a lack of concrete evidence. In relation to Mozambique Airlines Flight 470, cockpit data revealed that the captain locked the door and initiated a steady manual descent until impact. Investigators pointed to a deliberate act, though no prior history or evidence of psychological instability was ever identified. In relation to EgyptAir Flight 990, American investigators concluded that the relief captain intentionally caused the crash. Egyptian authorities, however, denied this version, insisting instead on technical failure. Mysteries that may never be fully solved. But what about you? Do you believe the official versions, or do you see something beyond? Thank you for watching. This is Mystique Channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos.